name is Samridhi and today I am here at Red Cross to interview two members. This interview will be about poverty and the contributions Red Cross has done towards addressing this major global issue. Let's go inside! Hi, my name is Samridhi and I am from grade 5E. Today I will be interviewing two members from Red Cross, Miss Noor and Miss Suti. Miss Suti is from the Global Engagement Team and Miss Noor is the Senior Executive of the International Affairs. So these questions will be based on poverty and Red Cross's contributions towards addressing this major global issue. So now let's start. Question 1. How do you think we can contribute to stop rural poverty?
So there's different areas that you can work on within the Singapore Red Cross. So we have programs in overseas and also in Singapore, local in Singapore as well. So overseas, we do have the Overseas Humanitarian Program.
Okay.
So we work with different communities to build resilience in different ways. So one of the ways that we work with them is to teach first aid, basic first aid,
Okay.
Which is an important area to know, especially when you can't afford the basic first aid necessities like bandage or plasters. So what we do when we go overseas is our team of volunteers, they work on how you can use household items to replicate the first aid items.
Oh, okay.
So that's one way that we work with overseas communities. And you can be a volunteer, you can go through our overseas disaster deployment training and also be part of this overseas humanitarian program, and in some way or another help to build resilient communities abroad. But in the local Singapore context also, we do have different programs that is closely related to alleviating poverty. So we have a department called the Community Engagement Programs, which basically what they do is different programs for the local Singapore vulnerable communities. So there's different groups of people that they work with, elderlies, young person and children, also families in general.
Okay.
So for instance, they have this program that is called Meals with Love. So they work with a vendor to provide meals voucher in general, so that beneficiaries can buy basic necessities. So whether this be food for their nutrition, to ensure that they grow well, or basic necessities like diapers or anything like that. We also have the program called Young Hearts, so that is for children and young persons. So we provide them with tuition.
Okay.
So we have centers that provide them with tuition, because they might not necessarily afford these extra classes outside of the school.
Yep.
Apart from that, we also bring them to outings, to different touristy areas in Singapore, so that they have a holistic well-being growing up as children from rental flats. So there's different ways that you can be a part of Singapore Red Cross. So even in the local programs, a lot of the work are actually run by volunteers.
Yeah.
So we can all play our small role in being a volunteer and be part of these different programs that help to increase the overall well-being of people who may be coming from a more challenged life. Yeah.
Okay, that was a great answer. So second question we have, what do you think poverty is all about?
Wow. So I think it's different ways that we can look at it. So I think in Singapore context, it might be very different from other countries. Other countries it might be, you can say it's a bit more straightforward.
Yeah.
you can easily see what is poverty. But in Singapore, I think it's a bit different. Poverty is very much hidden in Singapore, in the flats that we live. So yeah, I think in Singapore context, like I mentioned, the different groups that we work with are mostly people in rental flats, people who can't afford basic necessities. So in that way, you can say that that's how we can interpret poverty in Singapore.
Poverty in Singapore. Yes. Okay. So the third question is, do you think it is possible for the world to make poverty disappear? So we can look like overall in all the countries, not just Singapore, but like overall, do you think it is possible to make poverty disappear?
I think in a perfect world, maybe it is. It is possible if everyone put in their effort.
Yeah, definitely.
Like I mentioned, sometimes it's the little things, volunteering with organizations like the Singapore Red Cross. But even making sure, the neighbor next to you, you just check in with your neighbor. Are they okay? Sometimes, like I mentioned, poverty in Singapore is very well hidden. It's not very obvious in like other countries. So I think if everyone plays their part, even in a very small way, I think it might, I don't know if it's going to totally alleviate poverty, but I think it will at least build the resilient sea of the society and ensure that even if you are in poverty, you are being well taken care of by another person.
Okay. So the next question is, why do you think poverty is a global issue? So as I've mentioned earlier, poverty is a major global issue. In the SDG goals, it's the #1 major issue that still people are trying to find a solution, though we don't know if we can stop it all around the world. So why do you think poverty is a global issue? So the next question is, what are the major impacts of poverty? So this question means that people who are getting affected, how do you think poverty affects them? So this is your perspective, you can answer.
So there are various ways that we see how it can impact them. So first of all, it can be nutrition. So like I mentioned earlier, they don't have access to basic nutrition. Both with the communities that we met overseas and also in local Singapore context. There's also an issue of education. Not everyone have access to the education, the same type of education. Like for instance, so we work with them with tuitions, and then for the overseas communities, we do have programs that we build schools, we refurbish their libraries. So basic things like that. What else? I think that's the two main ones that heavily impacts communities.
Okay. So the next question is So the next question is, what do you think are the main causes of poverty? So we have talked about the impacts. They have no access to education, healthcare, and even medical facilities. So now it's causes. So in different countries, there are different reasons. Maybe you could look specifically at a country, but overall, why do you think poverty starts? Like, where does it start?
You want to say first?
Okay, so I think when we're looking at something as complex as poverty, we have to look at it from a more holistic point of view, because there are many layers to it. So to answer your question directly, I think it's a lot about access. Access to what Noor mentioned earlier about to healthcare, to education, to basic necessities, to being able to obtain these basic necessities is something that creates this divide and this financial struggle. So it's important for us to look at it from a broader perspective and to understand that there are different factors that can create that can start poverty. So I mean, from disasters to whatnot, like communities will be affected. So therefore, so there are a lot of different factors to it. Yeah.
And I think it's also sometimes it's a cycle.
Yes, definitely.
So that's one of the ways that we are trying to do within our local programs. We are trying to break that cycle by providing those like vouchers. I mean, it looks very simple, but sometimes, from nutrition, from education, basic tuition, you can break that poverty cycle. Just to add on to that. Yeah.
Okay. So the final question is, how do you think we as common people can contribute to Red Cross in a way that our contributions can reach to those people who don't have access to basic needs?
Yep, so there's different ways that you can contribute within Singapore Red Cross. But like I mentioned earlier, a lot of our programs are actually run by volunteers. So for instance, our overseas humanitarian program are very much planned from start to finish by volunteers. So that's how you can contribute. But also, you can, when a disaster happens, there's also, fundraising events and all that. So that's one way that you can do if you can have your time to go overseas. So that's different ways that you can work. For the local programs, it's also the same. You can volunteer. You can also help us to raise awareness. And young people like you can join our Red Cross youth programs. So we have a department for specifically for youths. So they work with different schools, different young persons like you to help raise awareness of the different programs in Singapore Red Cross. And help to make sure that the vulnerable communities are being looked at. So it is very simple ways that common people like us, can contribute day to day. Anything else?
But the base of it is just awareness. It doesn't. If we don't have time, we don't have financial capabilities or whatnot, or we don't have maybe like the mental bandwidth to really keep raising awareness for something. It's just, it can start with us, with just being aware, like what you mentioned, just check on your neighbors and stuff. It's making it kind of second nature to care for other people beyond ourselves. Yeah.
Okay, so thank you so much for your answers, and that's the end of the interview. I really hope you all learned something today. Bye! Hi, I just finished my interview. Now I have understood that Red Cross has contributed a lot to poverty, so you should come to Red Cross and volunteer too. Bye!
I think it's, for instance, there's like so many things that happen in the world, right? There's different crises, there's different disasters. So that by itself can create poverty within countries.